What if the woman everyone pitied at the altar became the wife of the most powerful billionaire in the room just 5 minutes later? She's been standing there for 20 minutes. The whisper spread through the church like poison. Maya Whitmore's hands trembled beneath her wedding veil. Her mascara had already begun to run. The guests weren't even trying to hide their stares anymore, because the groom was gone. No calls, no explanation, just a cold text message glowing on her phone. I can't marry a poor waitress. Camille gives me a future you never could. The room fell silent. Then suddenly, a chair scraped against the marble floor in the back row. Everyone turned. A tall man dressed in simple black clothing slowly stepped forward. Calm, expressionless, dangerous in a way nobody could explain. Some guests laughed softly. "Oh, great," someone whispered. "Now the hotel driver feels sorry for her." But the man stopped directly in front of Maya, looked into her tear-filled eyes, and said the words nobody expected. "Then marry me instead." And what happened after that shocked everyone inside the church. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe, because this story will change the way you see kindness, love, and the people society ignores. Chicago was beautiful from a distance. The skyline glittered at night like something out of a dream, all glass towers and golden lights reflecting over the river. Tourists came from all over the world to photograph the city's luxury hotels, rooftop restaurants, and elegant shopping streets. But Maya Whitmore rarely looked up long enough to enjoy any of it. Most mornings began before sunrise. By 5:30, she was already tying the strings of her dark red waitress apron inside the employee locker room of the Grand Crescent Hotel, the most luxurious hotel in downtown Chicago. The rich guests called it breathtaking. For Maya, it was simply where her feet hurt for 14 hours a day. "Table 12 is still waiting on coffee," Diane Mercer shouted from across the dining hall. Maya quickly grabbed the tray. "Coming!" Diane crossed her arms. "And smile more. Wealthy guests don't like exhausted faces." Maya forced a polite smile, even though her back ached from working double shifts all week. "Yes, ma'am." The dining hall buzzed with expensive laughter and soft piano music. Crystal chandeliers hung above marble floors so polished they reflected the lights like mirrors. Everything in the hotel looked perfect. Everything except the employees hiding behind the scenes, especially Maya. At 27 years old, she lived in a tiny apartment on the south side of the city with her mother, Nora Whitmore, whose medical bills had nearly destroyed them financially. Every dollar Maya earned disappeared almost immediately. Rent, medicine, groceries, hospital payments. Sometimes she skipped meals so her mother could eat better food. But nobody inside this Grand Crescent Hotel noticed things like that. To most people there, Maya was invisible. "Excuse me?" an elderly guest suddenly called. Maya hurried over. "Yes, sir?" The man smiled kindly. "You dropped this." He handed her a folded $20 bill. Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You don't need to." "You're the only waitress here who treats people like human beings," he said softly. Maya's expression changed. For a second, she almost looked emotional. "Thank you," she whispered. The man nodded once and left. From nearby, another waitress rolled her eyes. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "You always get the generous guests?" Maya laughed quietly. "Maybe because I'm nice to them. Or maybe because you look sad all the time." The other waitress smirked before walking away. Maya looked down at the $20 bill in her hand. $20. To some people inside this building, that amount meant absolutely nothing. To her, it meant medicine for her mother tomorrow morning. Her phone vibrated inside her apron pocket. She immediately checked it. Preston. A tired smile appeared on her face. "Hey, she answered softly while slipping into the hallway behind the kitchen. Preston Vale's voice sounded distracted. Did you confirm the seating chart for Saturday? Maya blinked. The wedding seating chart? Yes, Maya. The wedding. Something in his tone made her stomach tighten. I was just asking, she said quietly. There was silence on the other end. Then Preston sighed. Look, my father invited some important business people. Don't embarrass me by talking too much around them. Maya froze. What? You know what I mean, he muttered. Just act classy. Her chest tightened painfully. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. 3 years together. 3 years of promises. And somehow he still spoke to her like she was a problem he needed to manage. I have to go, Preston said suddenly. Camille's waiting. Maya frowned. Camille? A friend from work. The line disconnected before she could answer. She slowly lowered the phone. Something about the conversation felt wrong. Cold. Distant. But she pushed the feeling away. Stress, she told herself. Wedding stress. Nothing more. Maya! Diane's sharp voice echoed again. Maya quickly returned to the dining hall. And that was when she saw him. A tall man stood near the entrance wearing a plain dark jacket and faded jeans. His beard was neatly trimmed, but there was something unusual about him. Something calm and unreadable in his expression. One of the security guards blocked his path. Deliveries go through the back. I'm not making a delivery, the man replied calmly. Then this restaurant is for guests only. Several people nearby glanced toward him with annoyance. A wealthy woman wrinkled her nose. He probably wants money. The man said nothing. He simply stood there quietly while strangers judged him without knowing anything about him. Maya hated moments like that. Before she could stop herself, she walked over. It's okay, she told the guard gently. I can help him. The guard looked irritated. Maya, Diane said not to. I'll handle it. The guard stepped away reluctantly. Maya turned toward the stranger. Hi, she said softly. Are you waiting for someone? The man looked at her carefully. His eyes were dark, steady, intelligent. For some reason, being near him made her nervous. No, he answered. I just needed coffee. Maya smiled faintly. Well, technically, you need money first, but I can probably fix the coffee problem. For the first time, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. She guided him toward a quiet table near the window. What would you like? Whatever you recommend. That dangerous, huh? His eyes warmed with amusement. A little. 10 minutes later, Maya returned with hot coffee and a plate of fresh bread from the kitchen. You didn't have to do this, the man said. I know. Then why did you? Maya shrugged lightly. Because everyone deserves to sit somewhere warm once in a while. The room around them continued moving noisily, but for a strange moment, silence settled between them. The man studied her carefully. Not the way most men did. Not like Preston. This felt different. Like he was trying to understand who she really was. What's your name? He asked. Maya. He nodded slowly. Maya Whitmore. Her eyes widened. How do you know my last name? He glanced toward the small name tag pinned to her apron. She laughed awkwardly. Right, that makes more sense. But somehow, she still felt strangely unsettled. Thank you for the coffee, he said quietly. You're welcome, mister. Zaid. Just Zaid? Yes. Before she could ask anything else, Diane suddenly stormed toward the table. Maya, she snapped. Why are you wasting time entertaining random men during lunch service? Several nearby guests turned to stare. Maya's face flushed red. I'm sorry, I was just helping. Diane looked directly at Zaid with open disgust. If you can't afford a meal, sir, you need to leave. The room fell awkwardly silent. Maya felt humiliated for him. But Zaid didn't react, didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He simply reached into his pocket and placed a black credit card on the table. Diane instantly went pale, because even from several feet away, she recognized the card. American Express Centurion. The black card. One of the rarest credit cards in the world. The tension in the room changed immediately. Diane's entire expression transformed. I apologize, sir, she stammered. Zaid calmly stood. Then, without even looking at Diane, he turned toward Maya. Thank you for treating me kindly before you thought I had money. And with that, he walked away. Maya stared after him in confusion. Because for the first time in weeks, someone had looked at her like she mattered. But she had no idea that meeting Zaid al-Harun was about to change her entire life forever. And 2 days later, she would discover the horrifying truth about Preston. Rain fell lightly over downtown Chicago on the morning of Maya Whitmore's wedding, not enough to ruin the day, just enough to make the city feel cold. Inside the bridal suite of St. Andrew's Cathedral, soft classical music played through hidden speakers, while makeup artists rushed around adjusting dresses and flowers. Everything looked beautiful, everything except Maya's expression. You need to relax, one bridesmaid said while pinning the veil into Maya's hair. You look terrified. Maya forced a smile at the mirror. I'm okay. But she wasn't. Her stomach had been tight since the night before. Preston barely answered her calls. His texts were short, cold, distant. And there was still the strange gold cufflink she had found inside his suit pocket 3 days earlier. The engraved letter S kept replaying in her mind. At first she assumed it belonged to his father, Grant Vale. But something about Preston's reaction when she asked him about it felt wrong. Too defensive. Too fast. Her phone suddenly buzzed on the vanity table. For one hopeful second, her heart lifted. Preston. She answered immediately. Hey, she whispered, but all she heard was heavy breathing. Preston? Silence. Then the line disconnected. Maya stared at the screen. A strange chill moved through her chest. Maya. One of the bridesmaids touched her shoulder gently. It's time? The church downstairs was already full. Prestigious businessmen, luxury investors, socialites dressed in diamonds and designer gowns. Grant Vale had made sure the wedding looked expensive enough to impress everyone important in Chicago. Because to the Vale family, appearances mattered more than love. As Maya walked toward the cathedral doors with trembling hands, she overheard whispers from nearby guests. That's her? She's beautiful, but she's still just a waitress. I heard Preston's father never approved. Honestly, this marriage won't last. Maya lowered her eyes. Every word landed like a knife. But she kept walking, because she loved Preston. Or at least, she loved the man she thought he used to be. The cathedral doors slowly opened. Everyone stood. The music echoed through the massive church as Maya stepped onto the white aisle beneath glowing chandeliers and stained glass windows. For a moment, everything felt surreal, beautiful, dreamlike. Then she reached the altar. And realized Preston wasn't there. Her heartbeat stopped. At first she thought maybe he was late, maybe traffic, maybe nerves. But as seconds stretched into minutes, the silence inside the cathedral became unbearable. The priest shifted awkwardly. Guests began whispering louder. Grant Vale looked furious. Maya tried calling Preston. No answer. Again. Nothing. Her breathing became shallow. The room no longer felt beautiful. It felt suffocating. Then suddenly, a woman's heels clicked against the marble floor near the front row. Camille Sterling. Tall, elegant, wearing a white designer coat that looked disturbingly close to bridal fashion. She smiled slowly as she approached Maya. And instantly Maya understood everything. The cufflink, the distance, the coldness. Camille stopped inches away from her. "I told him this would be cruel," Camille said softly, though her expression showed no guilt at all. Maya's lips trembled. "What are you talking about?" Camille tilted her head sympathetically. "Preston should have ended things weeks ago." The room fell silent. Guests openly stared now. Some even pulled out phones. Maya felt humiliated standing there in her wedding dress while strangers watched her life collapse in real time. "Where is he?" Maya whispered. Camille reached into her purse and pulled out a phone. "He asked me to show you this." Maya's hands shook as she took it. A message filled the screen. "Maya, I can't do this anymore. I'm tired of pretending love is enough. Camille offers the future I actually want. You're a waitress struggling to pay hospital bills. I need someone who belongs in my world." Her vision blurred instantly. Gasps echoed through the cathedral. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Maya could barely breathe. The humiliation was complete. Not only had Preston abandoned her, he had made sure everyone witnessed it. Grant Vale suddenly stood. "This wedding is over," he announced coldly. "Everyone please remain respectful." Respectful. The word almost made Maya laugh. People were already staring at her with pity. Others with judgment. Some with amusement. A few women whispered behind their hands while pretending not to. Maya felt smaller with every second. Camille stepped closer. "You should go home before this gets more embarrassing." Maya slowly looked up at her. "Did you know?" she whispered. Camille's smile barely moved. "Maya? Men like Preston don't marry women like you unless they're desperate." The words shattered something inside her. Tears filled Maya's eyes instantly. Not loud tears, not dramatic sobbing, just silent heartbreak. Because deep down, a part of her had always feared this moment, that no matter how hard she worked, no matter how kind she tried to be, people would always see her as poor first, worthless second. "Maya," the priest spoke gently now. "We can continue another day if you—" "No," Grant Vale interrupted sharply. "This family has suffered enough embarrassment." Maya turned toward him slowly. Embarrassment? She was the one abandoned at the altar, yet somehow she was still the humiliation. The injustice of it all made her chest ache. Then, suddenly, a chair scraped loudly against marble near the back row. The sound cut through the whispers instantly. Everyone turned. A tall man dressed entirely in black stood slowly from the final row of the cathedral. Calm, silent, unreadable. Maya recognized him immediately. Zaid, the mysterious man from the hotel. Diane Mercer had once mistaken him for someone poor, just like everyone in this church seemed to be doing now. A few guests frowned in confusion. "Who is that? Probably hotel staff. Why is he walking up here?" Grant Vale looked irritated. "This is a private ceremony." Yes, but Zaid ignored him completely. His dark eyes remained fixed only on Maya, steady, focused, almost protective. The room somehow grew quieter with every step he took. Even Camille looked uncomfortable now. Zaid stopped directly in front of Maya, close enough for her to notice the calm expression on his face, close enough to realize he didn't look shocked by what had happened, almost as if he had expected it. "Maya," he said quietly. Her throat tightened. "What are you doing here?" Instead of answering, he looked briefly around the cathedral, at the guests, the whispers, the judgment, the cruelty. Then his gaze returned to her tear-filled eyes. If a man can leave you at the altar because he's ashamed of your struggles, Zaid said calmly, then he never deserved you. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Even the rain outside seemed quieter now. Maya stared at him in disbelief. Camille laughed nervously. This isn't the time for charity. But Zaid never looked at her. Not once. Instead, he did something nobody expected. He held out his hand toward Maya and said softly, "Then marry me instead." The cathedral exploded with shocked whispers. One woman nearly dropped her champagne glass. Grant Vale stepped forward furiously. "What kind of joke is this?" But Maya couldn't speak, couldn't think, because standing in front of her was the same quiet man she had once offered coffee to without expecting anything in return. And somehow, his eyes held more sincerity than Preston's ever had. Then Zaid leaned slightly closer and said something only Maya could hear. "If you trust me," he whispered, "I can protect you and your mother from everything that's coming next." Maya's face turned pale, because suddenly this no longer felt like coincidence. For several long seconds, nobody inside St. Andrew's Cathedral moved. The entire room seemed frozen in disbelief. Maya Whitmore stood at the altar in her white wedding dress, tears still shining in her eyes, while a man most people assumed was a nobody calmly held out his hand toward her. "Then marry me instead." The words echoed through the church like thunder. Camille Sterling let out a short laugh first. Not because she thought it was funny, because she thought it was pathetic. "Oh my God," then she whispered loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "This is actually happening." A few people chuckled nervously. One businessman shook his head. "Who even is this guy?" Probably some employee from the hotel. Maybe he drove her here. The insults spread quickly through the crowd. But Zaid al-Haroun didn't react to any of it. His attention never left Maya. And strangely, that frightened her more than the whispers, because his eyes looked calm. Too calm, as if he already knew exactly what would happen next. Grant Vale stormed forward angrily. "This ceremony is over," he snapped. "Security! No!" The single word came from Zaid. Quiet, controlled, but powerful enough to stop the entire room. Grant frowned immediately. "You don't tell me what to do in my own family's event." Zaid slowly turned his head toward him, and for the first time, Grant hesitated. There was something unsettling about the man standing before him, something cold beneath the calmness, something dangerous. "You already allowed your son to humiliate her publicly," Zaid said evenly. "The least you can do now is remain silent." The room fell quiet again. Nobody expected someone dressed so simply to speak to Grant Vale that way. Grant's face turned red instantly. "You have no idea who you're talking to." Zaid's expression never changed. "No," he replied softly. "I know exactly who I'm talking to." Maya's breathing became uneven. Everything felt unreal. Just minutes earlier, she thought her life was over. Now a stranger was defending her in front of hundreds of people. But why? That question wouldn't leave her mind. "Maya," Camille interrupted coldly, "you're seriously not considering this." Maya slowly looked toward her. Camille crossed her arms. "You're emotional right now. Don't embarrass yourself even more by turning your failed wedding into some desperate stunt." More whispers spread across the cathedral. Maya felt the humiliation all over again. Failed wedding. Poor waitress. Desperate. The words kept hitting her from every direction. And worst of all, a part of her wondered if everyone was right. Zaid lowered his hand slowly, giving her space. "I'm not forcing you," he said quietly. Maya swallowed hard. "Why are you doing this?" For the first time since approaching the altar, since Something softened in Zaid's expression. Because nobody should stand alone while the world enjoys their pain. The words hit her harder than she expected. Not dramatic. Not rehearsed. Honest. She looked around the church, at the guests pretending to pity her while secretly enjoying the spectacle. At Camille standing proudly in white beside the family that had discarded her. At Grant Vale protecting his reputation instead of apologizing. And suddenly Maya realized something painful. Nobody here actually cared about her. Nobody except the stranger standing in front of her. "I don't even know you," she whispered. "You know enough." The answer confused her. Before Maya could respond, the cathedral doors suddenly opened again. Everyone turned. Preston Vale walked inside. The room exploded into whispers. Maya's heart stopped instantly. Preston looked irritated rather than guilty. His expensive gray suit was slightly wrinkled, and his tie hung loose around his neck as if he had rushed there reluctantly. His eyes landed on Maya first, then on Zaid, standing beside her, and immediately his expression darkened. "What the hell is this?" Camille hurried toward him. "Baby, I told you this would get messy." Preston barely listened. His attention stayed fixed on Maya. "You're seriously replacing me already?" he snapped. Maya stared at him in disbelief. "You left me. I changed my mind," Preston replied coldly. "That doesn't mean you get to turn this into a circus." A few guests nodded in agreement, because somehow, even after humiliating Maya publicly, Preston still believed he controlled the situation. Zaid stepped slightly in front of Maya. "She owes you nothing." Preston scoffed. "And who are you supposed to be?" Zaid said nothing. That silence irritated Preston even more. "You know what?" Preston laughed mockingly. "Fine. If Maya wants to marry some broke guy out of desperation, go ahead." Maya flinched. The cruelty in his voice felt worse now than before, because she finally realized something terrifying. This was who Preston truly was. Not the charming man she fell in love with years ago. Not the caring boyfriend who once promised to help her mother. That version of him had disappeared a long time ago. Maybe it never existed at all. "You told me you loved me," Maya whispered painfully. Preston rolled his eyes. Love doesn't pay for penthouses and private schools. The cathedral fell silent again. Even some guests looked uncomfortable now. Camille touched Preston's arm gently. "Let's just leave," she murmured. But Maya couldn't stop staring at him. 3 years. 3 years of sacrifice. She worked double shifts while he built his career. She skipped meals to help him save money. She believed every promise he made. And in the end, he threw her away because someone wealthier came along. Zaid suddenly spoke again. "If wealth is the only thing that matters to you," he said calmly to Preston, "then one day you'll discover how poor you truly are." Preston laughed loudly. "Coming from a guy dressed like a rideshare driver?" Several guests snickered, but Maya noticed something strange. Zaid didn't look embarrassed, not even slightly, almost like the insults meant absolutely nothing to him. Then Diane Mercer suddenly appeared near the cathedral entrance. She had apparently rushed there straight from the hotel after hearing about the scandal. Her eyes widened when she saw Maya standing beside Zaid. "Oh no," Diane muttered under her breath. Because unlike everyone else in the church, Diane remembered the black card. She remembered the way powerful executives at the hotel reacted whenever they heard the name Zaid mentioned quietly among upper management. Fear flashed across her face instantly. But before she could speak, Zaid looked back toward Maya. His voice softened again. "If you walk away now, they'll spend years convincing you this moment defines your worth." Maya felt tears rising again. "And if I say yes?" The room held its breath. Zaid answered without hesitation. Then nobody here will ever humiliate you again. Her chest tightened painfully, not because of money, not because of revenge, but because for the first time that entire day, someone sounded certain she deserved protection instead of shame. Maya looked at Preston one last time. He showed no regret, no sadness, only annoyance, as if she had become inconvenient. Then she looked at Zaid, and somehow, despite barely knowing him, she felt safer beside him than she ever had with Preston. Slowly, with trembling fingers, Maya placed her hand into his. Gasps erupted throughout the cathedral. Camille's face turned pale. Grant Vale looked furious. Preston stared in disbelief, but Zaid simply closed his hand gently around Maya's. Calm, steady, certain. Then he leaned closer and whispered something that made Maya's entire expression change. After tonight, he murmured, powerful people are going to come after you. Maya's heartbeat quickened instantly. What do you mean? But before Zaid could answer, the cathedral doors suddenly burst open again, and this time, 2 men in dark suits entered carrying sealed legal documents. The cathedral remained silent as the 2 men in dark suits walked down the aisle carrying sealed documents. Every guest turned to stare. Maya's hand instinctively tightened around Zaid's. What is this? Grant Vale demanded angrily. Neither man answered him. Instead, they approached Zaid directly and handed him the folder with immediate respect. Everything is prepared, sir. Sir. The single word changed the atmosphere instantly. Preston frowned. Camille's confident expression flickered for the first time. Maya looked up at Zaid in confusion. He calmly opened the folder and removed several documents before turning toward the priest. If Maya agrees, he said quietly, the marriage license can be finalized immediately. Gasps spread across the cathedral again. He's serious? This isn't some joke? Oh my God. Maya could barely process what was happening. Only 30 minutes ago, she thought her entire life had collapsed. Now she stood beside a mysterious man offering her protection, certainty, and a way out of public humiliation. But something still terrified her. Why her? Zaid, she whispered carefully. Why are legal papers already prepared? His eyes met hers calmly. Because I knew Preston would leave. The answer sent chills through her body. What? Before he could explain further, Preston suddenly laughed harshly. This is insane, he snapped. You planned this? No, Zaid replied evenly. You planned this. Preston's expression darkened instantly. For a brief second, real fear flashed across his face, but it disappeared quickly. You don't know anything about me. Zaid said nothing, and somehow that silence felt worse. The priest looked uncertain. Maya, he said gently, you do not have to make a decision under pressure. Pressure. The word echoed painfully inside her chest, because everyone in the room still looked at her the same way, like the poor waitress should feel grateful any man wanted her at all. Camille folded her arms. You're really going to marry a stranger? She asked mockingly. Maya slowly looked toward her. A stranger didn't humiliate me in front of hundreds of people. The cathedral fell quiet again. Camille's face tightened. Preston stepped closer toward Maya. You're emotional right now, he said, lowering his voice. Don't ruin your life over this. Maya stared at him in disbelief. Ruin my life? She whispered. You left me at the altar. Preston exhaled impatiently. I was trying to avoid embarrassing you. The cruelty of the statement almost made her laugh. Avoid embarrassing her? After publicly destroying her? Zaid's jaw tightened slightly for the first time, but he still remained controlled. Dangerously controlled. You should leave, he told Preston calmly. Preston scoffed. Or what? The entire room waited. But Zaid simply turned back toward Maya instead of answering. And somehow, that made Preston even angrier, because being ignored felt worse than confrontation. Maya looked down at the marriage documents in her trembling hands. Everything was happening too fast, too unreal. Yet deep inside, another feeling slowly appeared beneath the fear. Relief. Because for the first time all day, she wasn't standing alone anymore. The priest spoke carefully. Maya Whitmore, do you wish to proceed? Her heartbeat pounded painfully. This was insane. Absolutely insane. But when she looked around the cathedral again, she realized something important. There was nothing left here for her. Not with Preston. Not with the Vale family. Not with the guests secretly enjoying her humiliation. Then she looked back at Zaid, and for reasons she still couldn't explain, his presence made her feel safe. Slowly, Maya nodded. Yes. The room erupted instantly. What? She actually said yes! This is unbelievable! Camille stared in horror. Preston looked furious now. You can't be serious. But Maya no longer looked at him. The ceremony continued almost like a dream. The priest's voice echoed softly through the cathedral, while the guests whispered non-stop behind them. Maya barely heard most of the vows. Her mind remained overwhelmed. At one point, she glanced sideways toward Zaid. He stood perfectly calm beside her. No nervousness, no hesitation. As if marrying her had already been decided long ago. That thought unsettled her deeply. When the rings were exchanged, Maya noticed something else strange. Zaid's ring carried an engraved symbol she didn't recognize. Elegant, ancient-looking. The same symbol she would later discover inside one of Chicago's most powerful corporate empires. By the authority vested in me, the priest began carefully, still sounding slightly stunned himself. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The cathedral fell silent. Then Zaid gently lifted Maya's trembling hand and kissed it softly, not possessively, not for show, respectfully. The reaction shocked the room even more because the gesture felt sincere. Camille suddenly grabbed Preston's arm tightly. We need to leave. But Preston kept staring at Maya with growing anger, as if he suddenly realized he had lost control over the situation. Then Zaid finally looked toward the crowd. His dark eyes swept calmly across the cathedral, and for reasons nobody could explain, the room became quiet immediately. Today, he said evenly, many people revealed exactly who they are. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted him. If your first instinct is to mock someone during their lowest moment, Zaid continued, then wealth, status, and education mean absolutely nothing. But several guests lowered their eyes uncomfortably. Even Grant Vale looked unsettled now. Then Zaid turned toward Maya. Let's go home. Home. The word hit Maya unexpectedly hard, because she hadn't felt safe enough to call any place home in a very long time. Outside the cathedral, heavy rain poured across the city streets. Black luxury vehicles waited along the curb. Maya froze when she saw them. At least 6 SUVs. Security personnel. Drivers standing respectfully under umbrellas. The guests exiting behind them also stopped in confusion. Preston's face slowly lost color, because rich families understood what ordinary people didn't. This level of security belonged to someone extremely powerful. Diane Mercer suddenly rushed out of the cathedral doors behind them. Sir? She called nervously. Zaid turned slightly. Diane swallowed hard before lowering her voice. The board members from the hotel have been trying to contact you all afternoon. Maya frowned. Board members? Hotel? But before she could ask anything, Diane noticed her expression and instantly looked terrified, because she realized she had said too much. Zaid calmly removed his suit jacket and placed it over Maya's shoulders to shield her from the rain. The gesture felt strangely intimate, protective, real. Then he opened the SUV door for her personally. As Maya slid into the luxurious vehicle, reporters suddenly appeared from across the street. Cameras flashed violently. "Who is the bride?" "So, is it true Preston Vale was abandoned? Sir, are the rumors true about the acquisition?" The acquisition? Maya looked toward Zaid immediately, but he remained calm, almost prepared. One reporter shouted louder than the others. "Mr. Al-Haroun, did you marry her to save your company's reputation?" Maya's entire body froze. Al-Haroun. The name hit her instantly, because everyone in Chicago's luxury hotel industry knew it. Al-Haroun Global, one of the wealthiest hotel empires in the world. Slowly, very slowly, Maya turned toward the man sitting beside her, and for the first time since meeting him, she realized she had absolutely no idea who her new husband truly was. The ride through downtown Chicago felt unreal. Rain streaked across the tinted SUV windows while flashing camera lights disappeared behind them one by one. Inside the vehicle, silence filled the space between Maya and Zaid. Not awkward silence. Heavy silence. The kind that came when someone's entire reality had just changed in a single afternoon. Maya sat stiffly in her wedding dress, Zaid's black jacket wrapped around her shoulders, trying to process everything she had just heard. Al-Haroun Global, one of the largest luxury hotel empires in the world. And somehow, she had married its owner. Finally, Maya turned toward him. "You're really Zaid Al-Haroun?" His expression remained calm. "Yes." The answer came so simply that it almost made her angry. "You could have told me. I wanted you to know me before my name." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "You let everyone think you were poor." Zaid looked out the window briefly before answering. "People reveal their true character when they think someone has nothing to offer them." The words hit her immediately, because she remembered exactly how Diane Mercer treated him, how the guests at the cathedral mocked him, how Preston laughed at him. And suddenly Maya understood something terrifying. Zaid had been watching all of them, testing them. "But why me?" she whispered again. This time, Zaid didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and handed her a folded photograph. Maya carefully opened it. Her breath caught instantly. The picture showed a much younger Nora Whitmore, standing beside a thin, college-aged man outside a small diner. The young man was Zaid, or at least, a younger version of him. "What is this?" "Your mother took that photo 15 years ago," Zaid said quietly. Maya looked at him in shock. "She knows you?" "She saved me." The SUV fell silent again. Before Maya could ask more questions, the vehicle slowed in front of a towering luxury high-rise overlooking the Chicago River. Security guards immediately opened the doors. Maya froze. The lobby alone looked larger than her entire apartment building. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, private elevators. Staff members lined the entrance respectfully. "Welcome home, Mr. Al-Haroun." Maya almost stepped backward, because nobody had ever spoken to someone beside her with that level of respect before. But what shocked her more was the way they looked at her. Not with pity, not with judgment, with respect, as if she already belonged there, as if she already... Zaid noticed her hesitation. "You don't have to be afraid." "I'm not afraid," Maya whispered. But she was. Not of him. Of the world surrounding him. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, while soft piano music played quietly somewhere in the background. Everything felt elegant without trying too hard. Nothing flashy. Nothing desperate. Real wealth. Maya stood near the entrance, still unable to fully move. Zaid loosened the cuff buttons of his black shirt calmly. "You should rest. It's been a difficult day." Maya laughed weakly. "A difficult day?" For the first time, Zaid smiled slightly. "Fair enough." Then Maya suddenly remembered something. "My mother. She's safe." Maya blinked. "What?" "I already arranged private medical care for her tonight." Maya's eyes widened instantly. "You what?" "She needed treatment weeks ago," Zaid said carefully. "The hospital was delaying approval because of unpaid balances." "How do you know that?" Again, silence. And again that silence frightened her more than answers, because it meant he knew far more about her life than she realized. "Zaid," she whispered slowly, "how long have you been watching me?" Before he could answer, his phone rang. His expression darkened slightly after reading the screen. "What happened?" Maya asked. "There's a gala tonight at the Grand Crescent Hotel." Maya frowned. So Grant Vale is trying to finalize a business agreement using investors connected to my company. Everything clicked instantly. The wedding, the humiliation, the pressure. Preston hadn't just abandoned her for love. There had been business involved. "Did Preston know who you were?" Maya asked carefully. "No." "Then why was he afraid of losing Camille?" "Because Camille Sterling's family controls Sterling Capital." Maya's stomach tightened. One of the largest investment firms in the country. Suddenly, Preston's betrayal looked even uglier than before. He hadn't chosen love. He had chosen money. Zaid adjusted the sleeve of his black shirt slowly. "They believed humiliating you publicly would make the transition cleaner." Maya felt sick hearing it spoken aloud, like she had been some inconvenience they needed to erase. Then Zaid looked directly at her. "Would you trust me for one more night?" The question caught her off guard. "What do you mean?" "Come with me to the gala." Maya stared at him. "In this dress?" A faint smile touched his lips again. "No." Less than an hour later, Maya barely recognized herself. The stylists inside the penthouse worked quietly and respectfully, transforming her appearance without making her feel small. Her new gown was elegant and deep emerald green, fitting her like something from another life. Her hair fell in soft waves across her shoulders. Minimal jewelry. Natural makeup. Beautiful without looking artificial. When Maya stepped out of the dressing room, Zaid was waiting near the windows. And for the first time since meeting him, he looked genuinely affected. His eyes lingered on her silently. Not in a possessive way. Not like Preston used to. With admiration. "You look stunning," he said quietly. Maya felt heat rise to her face. "Thank you." Then she finally noticed his appearance, and her breath nearly stopped. Zaid now wore traditional Arab attire, unlike anything she had ever seen in person. A deep blue bisht embroidered with gold rested over a perfectly tailored white thobe. A white gutra framed his face beneath a black eagle. Elegant, powerful, regal. He no longer looked like the quiet man drinking coffee alone near the hotel window. He looked dangerous, like someone entire industries feared, and somehow, the transformation terrified her. "You planned this," Maya whispered suddenly. Zaid's expression changed slightly. "The gala? The reveal?" He didn't deny it. Outside the ballroom of the Grand Crescent Hotel, reporters crowded the entrance while luxury vehicles lined the street. Inside, Grant Vale confidently greeted investors, believing the evening was still under his control. Preston stood beside Camille, looking tense but composed. Then the ballroom doors opened, and everything changed. Zaid entered first. The entire room froze instantly. Conversations died mid-sentence. Executives straightened immediately. Investors turned pale, because every powerful person in that ballroom recognized him instantly. Zaid al-Harun, the real owner of the Grand Crescent Hotel. But the true shock came 1 second later, when Maya stepped inside beside him. Gasps spread across the ballroom. Camille's champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. Preston's face lost all color. Grant Vale looked like he had stopped breathing, because the waitress they publicly humiliated only hours earlier had just entered the ballroom as Mrs. Al-Harun. And suddenly, everyone who once laughed at her looked terrified instead. The ballroom of the Grand Crescent Hotel had never been so silent. More than 200 wealthy guests stood frozen beneath crystal chandeliers, while Maya Whitmore walked beside Zaid al-Harun across the marble floor. Hours earlier, many of those same people had mocked her inside the cathedral. Now nobody dared to speak. The orchestra near the stage stopped playing entirely. Even the servers carrying champagne trays looked terrified to move, because everyone in that room understood one thing. Zaid al-Harun was not just wealthy. He was powerful enough to destroy careers with a single decision. Grant Vale recovered first. "Mr. Al-Harun," he said quickly, forcing a smile. "What an unexpected honor." Maya noticed the change instantly. At the wedding, Grant had treated Zaid like dirt. Now his voice sounded almost desperate. Zaid's expression remained unreadable. "Unexpected?" he replied calmly. "This is my hotel." The sentence landed like a slap across the room. Several executives lowered their eyes immediately. Grant swallowed hard. "Of course, I only meant, I know what you meant." The older man fell silent. Next to him, Preston looked pale. For the first time in his life, he seemed genuinely unsure of himself. Camille Sterling stepped forward carefully, still trying to maintain control. "Mr. Al-Harun," she said smoothly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding regarding today's events." Zaid slowly turned toward her. The coldness in his eyes made her voice weaken slightly. "A misunderstanding?" Camille forced a laugh. Maya was emotional. Preston didn't intend for things to become public. Maya stared at her in disbelief. Didn't intend? Preston abandoned her in front of hundreds of people. He sent a message humiliating her while standing beside another woman. And somehow Camille still tried to rewrite the story. Zaid glanced briefly toward Maya before speaking again. "Interesting." Camille blinked. "What is?" "That people who enjoy humiliating others always become uncomfortable when the truth arrives." The ballroom remained painfully quiet. No one interrupted him, because no one in that room had more power than the man standing beside Maya. Diane Mercer suddenly appeared near the back of the crowd, looking terrified. The moment their eyes met, Maya saw panic spread across Diane's face, because Diane finally understood the full situation. The waitress she constantly belittled was now the wife of the hotel owner. "Maya," Diane said nervously, stepping closer, "I just want you to know I always respected you." Maya almost laughed. Always respected her? This was the same woman who humiliated her in front of guests almost every day. Before Maya could answer, Zaid spoke calmly. "Interesting timing." Diane's face turned bright red. I only meant, you judged her value based on her paycheck," Zaid interrupted quietly. "Now you're trying to judge it based on her husband." The words cut through the ballroom instantly. Diane looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, because many of them had done exactly the same thing. Maya stood silently beside Zaid, overwhelmed by everything happening around her. She wasn't used to people defending her, especially not like this, especially not publicly. Then suddenly Preston stepped forward. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're acting like Maya's innocent in all this." Maya turned toward him slowly. "What does that mean?" Preston laughed bitterly. She knew exactly what she was doing. The accusation stunned her. What? She spent years acting sweet and humble while looking for a richer opportunity. Gasps spread quietly around the room. Maya felt her face go pale. Even now, even after betraying her, Preston still wanted to destroy her reputation. Camille crossed her arms confidently. "It does look suspicious," she added softly. "You marry a billionaire only hours after your wedding collapses?" Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. They abandoned her, humiliated her, then blamed her for surviving it. Before Maya could defend herself, Zaid stepped slightly in front of her. One movement. Simple. Protective. "She didn't know who I was," he said calmly. Preston scoffed. "And we're supposed to believe that?" Zaid's gaze hardened. "You believe whatever protects your ego." The ballroom grew tense instantly. Preston took another step forward. "You think money makes you better than everyone else?" "No," Zaid answered quietly. "Character does." The room fell silent again, because everyone knew Preston had lost that argument the moment he abandoned Maya publicly. Then Zaid reached into his jacket pocket slowly. Maya recognized the object immediately. The gold cufflink, the one engraved with the letter S. Camille's face changed instantly. Preston froze. "You recognize this?" Zaid asked calmly. Nobody answered. Zaid lifted the cufflink slightly. "Maya found this inside Preston's jacket days before the wedding." All eyes turned toward Preston and Camille immediately. Preston's jaw tightened. "It proves nothing." "No?" Zaid replied evenly. Then he looked directly toward Camille. "The Sterling family crest uses this exact engraving." Camille's expression cracked, and suddenly Maya understood. The cufflink had never belonged to Grant Vale. Preston lied because he was already involved with Camille before abandoning her. The betrayal suddenly felt even uglier, more calculated, more cruel. "Maya," Preston said quickly, "it's not what you think." She stared at him in disbelief. "Then what is it?" He hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. The ballroom buzzed with whispers now. People who once mocked Maya were beginning to turn against Preston instead. But Zaid wasn't finished. "She gave you loyalty," he said coldly. "And you traded her dignity for a business deal." Grant Vale immediately stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute." "No," Zaid interrupted sharply. For the first time all night, anger appeared clearly in his voice. Real anger. Dangerous anger. The ballroom froze. Even Grant stepped backward instinctively. "You invited hundreds of people to witness her humiliation because your son wanted access to Sterling capital," Zaid continued. "You turned betrayal into entertainment." Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Then Zaid looked toward Maya again, and instantly his expression softened. Completely different. "You offered me kindness when you believed I had nothing," he told her quietly. "That is something most wealthy people in this room failed to do." Maya's throat tightened emotionally. The memory flashed through her mind instantly. Coffee. Warm bread. A quiet table by the window. She had helped him because she thought he was alone. Nothing more. And somehow, that tiny moment had changed her entire life. "Why were you there that day?" she asked softly. The ballroom listened carefully. Zaid's eyes remained on hers. "Because for weeks," he admitted quietly, I had been visiting the hotel disguised as a delivery worker. Gasps spread again. I wanted to know which employees treated invisible people with respect. Diane looked horrified. Several executives suddenly looked nervous, but Zaid ignored all of them. And Maya Whitmore, he continued calmly, was the only person who never asked what I could give her before offering kindness. Maya felt tears rise in her eyes again, not from humiliation this time, from disbelief, because all her life, people treated her kindness like weakness. But somehow, Zaid saw it as something valuable. Then his expression darkened once more as he slowly turned back toward Preston and Camille. And now, he said quietly, it's time everyone hears the rest of the truth. The ballroom became deathly silent, because whatever Zaid planned to reveal next looked terrifying. The tension inside the Grand Crescent ballroom became unbearable. Nobody touched their drinks anymore. Nobody whispered. Every eye remained locked on Zaid al-Haroun, because the calm billionaire standing beside Maya no longer looked merely protective. He looked prepared to destroy every lie in the room. Preston tried to laugh again, but the confidence in his voice was fading fast. You're making dramatic speeches over a failed relationship, he snapped. That doesn't prove anything. Zaid slowly reached into his jacket pocket. Then he handed a small black device to one of his security men near the stage. The ballroom lights dimmed instantly. A large screen behind the orchestra flickered to life. Grant Vale's face lost color immediately. Turn that off, he demanded. Nobody moved. Zaid's voice remained calm. I think everyone deserves honesty tonight. Then audio filled the ballroom speakers. Preston's voice echoed clearly through the room. I'm not staying with a broke waitress my entire life. Maya froze. Her chest tightened painfully. On-screen security footage showed Preston sitting beside Camille in a private lounge only 3 nights before the wedding. Camille laughed softly in the recording. So, when are you ending things with her? Preston smirked. The wedding itself. Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Maya's eyes widened in horror. Preston's recorded voice continued. If I leave her privately, people will feel sorry for her. But if I humiliate her publicly, everyone moves on faster. Camille leaned against him on the screen. And your father's deal with Sterling Capital? Preston laughed. That's the entire point. My marriage to you secures the investment. The room exploded into shocked whispers. Several investors looked disgusted. One woman covered her mouth. Another guest muttered, That's evil. Maya felt like the air had been ripped from her lungs. Not because she still loved Preston. That part of her had already died. But because hearing the cruelty spoken so casually hurt more than she expected. To him, she had never been a person. Just an obstacle. Camille suddenly stepped forward in panic. That recording was taken illegally. Zaid's expression never changed. No, he replied calmly. It was taken inside a property legally owned by Al-Haroun Global. Camille's face went pale. Preston turned toward Grant desperately. Dad, say something! But Grant Vale looked terrified now, because he understood something Preston still didn't. Zaid wasn't humiliating them emotionally. He was destroying them strategically. Then another clip appeared on the screen. This time it showed Camille speaking to a public relations consultant. We'll leak the abandoned bride story online, Camille said confidently in the video. Poor waitress left at the altar. People love embarrassing stories like that. The consultant laughed. And the hotel? Camille smirked coldly. The scandal damages the Grand Crescent's reputation during the acquisition talks. Zaid al-Haroun loses leverage, Sterling Capital gains control, and Preston marries me looking like the hero. The ballroom erupted again, this time louder. because now everyone understood the full truth. Maya's humiliation had been planned, engineered, used as a weapon in a corporate strategy. Maya stared at Camille in disbelief. "You wanted people to laugh at me." Camille crossed her arms defensively. "It wasn't personal." Maya almost laughed through her tears. "Not personal?" They destroyed her life for business headlines. Suddenly, Diane Mercer stepped backward nervously toward the exit, but Zaid noticed immediately. "Leaving already?" Diane froze. I didn't know any of this." "No," Zaid replied quietly. "But you still enjoyed treating her like she was beneath you." Diane lowered her eyes in shame, and for the first time in years, Maya watched someone powerful hold cruel people accountable instead of protecting them. Preston suddenly slammed his fist against a nearby table. "You think you've won because you're rich?" he shouted. The ballroom fell silent again. Zaid looked at him calmly. "No, I won because Maya has character. You don't." Preston's face twisted with anger. "She married you for money." The accusation echoed loudly. Several guests looked uncertain again, because deep down, many of them still believed poor women only married wealthy men for financial security. Maya felt the judgment returning instantly, but before she could speak, Zaid answered first. "She didn't know who I was." Preston scoffed bitterly. "And we're just supposed to believe your fairy tale?" For the first time, all night, Zaid's composure shifted. Not into rage, into something heavier, more personal. Slowly, he turned toward Maya. Then he spoke quietly enough that the entire ballroom had to listen carefully. 15 years ago, he began, I arrived in Chicago alone. The room became silent again. I was 19. My family had lost nearly everything after my father's business collapsed overseas. Maya stared at him in surprise. I worked construction during the day, Zaid continued, and studied at night. Most weeks I barely had enough money to eat. The billionaire standing before them suddenly sounded nothing like the powerful figure everyone feared. He sounded human, real. One winter night, he said softly, I collapsed outside a small diner during a snowstorm. Maya's heartbeat slowed, because somehow she already knew where this story was going. A woman found me unconscious in the alley behind the restaurant. Zaid looked directly into her eyes now. Your mother. Maya's breath caught instantly. The ballroom remained perfectly still. She brought me inside, Zaid continued. Fed me, paid for medicine she couldn't afford. And when I tried to repay her weeks later, a faint sadness crossed his face. She refused. Maya felt tears filling her eyes again. She told me kindness means nothing if you only give it to people who can return it. The sentence shattered something inside the room, because suddenly everyone understood why Zaid chose Maya. Not because she was beautiful, not because she was convenient, because she carried the same heart as her mother. I spent years searching for Nora Whitmore, Zaid admitted quietly. But by the time I found her again, she was already sick. Maya could barely breathe now. You knew who I was from the beginning, she whispered. Yes. Then why didn't you tell me? Zaid looked at her carefully. Because I needed to know whether kindness was truly part of who you were, or simply something taught by circumstance. Maya stared at him emotionally. And? A faint smile appeared in his eyes. You proved it every single day. Silence spread across the ballroom again. Not tense silence. Emotional silence. Even some guests looked ashamed now, because the poor waitress they mocked had unknowingly inherited the same compassion that once saved a struggling young immigrant's life. Then suddenly Preston laughed bitterly. So what? This whole marriage is still charity. The words cut through the moment instantly. Maya flinched slightly, but Zaid's gaze hardened. No, he said calmly. Charity is giving someone money and forgetting their name. Then he looked directly at Maya. What I offered her was respect. Maya's eyes filled completely with tears, because nobody had ever said those words about her before. Not Preston, not the guests, not even herself. Then Zaid reached gently for her hand again, and quietly asked the question that changed everything. Maya, do you believe this marriage is real? The ballroom held its breath, waiting for her answer. The ballroom remained silent after Zaid's question. Maya, do you believe this marriage is real? Hundreds of people waited for her answer. Executives, reporters, investors. The same crowd that once watched her humiliation now watched her like she mattered. But Maya barely noticed them anymore. Her eyes stayed fixed on Zaid, on the man who had entered her life like a storm and shattered everything she thought she understood about wealth, power, and kindness. Just hours earlier, she believed she had lost everything. Now she stood beside one of the most powerful men in the world, hearing truths she never imagined possible. And somehow, the thing affecting her most wasn't the money. It was the respect, nobody had ever protected her the way Zaid did. Nobody had ever looked at her like her kindness had value. Maya slowly swallowed. She whispered. Her voice trembled slightly. But before she could continue, Preston suddenly laughed bitterly from across the ballroom. Don't tell me you're actually falling for this. The moment shattered instantly. Preston stepped forward again, his face pale with humiliation and anger. He doesn't love you, he snapped. He barely knows you. That's why Maya looked at him quietly. For the first time in years, she saw him clearly. Not the charming boyfriend she once defended. Not the ambitious man she thought would build a future beside her. Just a selfish person terrified of losing control. And suddenly, she felt strangely calm. You're right, Maya said softly. Preston blinked. What? You're right, she repeated. He doesn't know everything about me. The ballroom grew quiet again. But he knew enough not to humiliate me. Preston's expression hardened instantly. Maya continued slowly. He knew enough to defend me when everyone else was laughing. Camille crossed her arms. Oh, please, you're acting like this is some fairy tale. Maya turned toward her calmly. No, she replied. I'm acting like I finally understand who deserves a place in my life. The words landed heavily. Camille looked stunned. Because the frightened waitress from the cathedral was gone now, something inside Maya had changed. Not because she married a billionaire, because she finally stopped begging cruel people to value her. Zaid watched her quietly, and for the first time that night, real warmth appeared in his eyes. Then Grant Vale suddenly cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Al-Haroun, he said carefully. Perhaps we should discuss business privately. The desperation in his tone was obvious now, because the Vale family understood the disaster unfolding around them. Sterling Capital investors were already whispering. Executives were checking their phones. The recordings had spread online. Public opinion was turning viciously against Preston and Camille. And if Zaid withdrew support from the Grand Crescent acquisition, Grant Vale's company could collapse completely. Zaid looked toward him calmly. There's nothing left to discuss. Grant's face paled. You don't understand how many people will suffer if this deal falls apart. Zaid's expression darkened slightly. Your son didn't seem worried about suffering when he publicly destroyed Maya's life. Grant fell silent, because there was no defense left. Nearby, several board members from the hotel approached nervously. One older executive lowered his voice respectfully. Mr. Al-Haroun, the board is requesting an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Zaid nodded once. Then the executive carefully turned toward Maya. "Mrs. Al-Harun," he said politely, "welcome to the Grand Crescent family." Maya almost froze hearing the title. Mrs. Al-Harun. The word still felt unreal, but what shocked her even more was how differently people treated her now. Only yesterday, she was invisible. Today, powerful executives stood respectfully in front of her. The realization made her uncomfortable, because deep down, she was still the same woman. The only thing that changed was the name beside hers. As if sensing her thoughts, Zaid quietly leaned closer. "Don't let their sudden respect confuse you," he murmured. "True character only appears when power is absent." Maya looked at him silently, and once again she realized he understood her thoughts before she even spoke them aloud. Hours later, the ballroom had mostly emptied. Reporters crowded outside the hotel entrance while security blocked questions from the media. Inside a quiet private lounge upstairs, Maya finally sat alone with Zaid for the first time since the wedding. No cameras, no whispers, no audience, just silence. Chicago's skyline glowed outside the windows while rain continued falling softly over the city. Maya slowly removed her heels with a tired sigh. "I think my feet stopped functioning 3 hours ago." A faint smile appeared on Zaid's face. "That's probably normal after marrying a stranger during a public scandal." To her surprise, Maya laughed, a real laugh. The first genuine one she'd had all day. Then the silence returned again. Not uncomfortable this time, just honest. Finally, Maya looked down at the wedding ring on her finger. "Did you really mean what you said?" she asked quietly. Zaid studied her carefully. "Which part?" "That you would protect me." His answer came immediately. "Yes." No hesitation. No uncertainty. Maya looked away toward the city lights. "I spent years trying to earn love by making myself smaller," she admitted softly. "Smaller needs, smaller dreams, smaller expectations." Zaid listened without interrupting. "But today," she whispered, "I realized people who truly care about you don't ask you to shrink." The room fell quiet again. Then Zaid stood slowly and walked toward the window overlooking the city. "When I first arrived in America," he said quietly, "I thought wealth would protect me from humiliation." Maya looked up at him. "But eventually I learned something," he continued. "Money changes how people treat you, not who they truly are." The words settled heavily between them. Then Zaid turned toward her fully. "If you want freedom after tonight," he said carefully, "I'll give it to you." Maya blinked. "What?" "This marriage protected you when you needed protection," he explained calmly. "But I won't trap you inside it." Her chest tightened unexpectedly. "I can arrange a private divorce quietly. No scandal, no pressure." Maya stared at him silently. Because suddenly, the idea of leaving hurt far more than she expected. Not because of wealth, not because of luxury, because somewhere between the cathedral and the ballroom, she had begun trusting him. And that terrified her. "Why would you let me go?" she whispered. For the first time all night, real emotion crossed Zaid's face. Subtle, but unmistakable. Because caring about someone means giving them a choice. Maya felt tears rise again instantly. Nobody had ever loved her like that before. Not possessively, not selfishly, gently, respectfully. Then her phone suddenly vibrated on the table beside her. "Unknown number." Maya frowned before answering carefully. "Hello?" For several seconds she said nothing. Then her face slowly lost color. Zaid noticed immediately. "What happened?" Maya lowered the phone slowly. Her voice barely came out above a whisper. "It's the hospital." Fear tightened across Zaid's expression instantly. "What about your mother?" Maya looked up at him with terrified eyes. "They said someone tried to access her medical records tonight." And suddenly, Zaid realized the danger surrounding Maya wasn't over yet. The drive to the hospital felt longer than any moment Maya Whitmore had ever lived through. Chicago's streets blurred outside the SUV windows while rain pounded against the glass. Beside her, Zaid remained calm on the surface, but Maya could feel the tension radiating from him now. Not business tension, personal, dangerous. The moment they arrived at St. Mary's Medical Center, security personnel were already waiting near the entrance. Zaid had clearly called ahead. Doctors immediately guided them through private elevators toward Nora Whitmore's hospital floor. Maya's heartbeat pounded harder with every step. "What happened?" she asked the nurse anxiously. The woman hesitated before answering. "Someone attempted to gain unauthorized access to your mother's medical records about an hour ago." "Who?" "We're still investigating." But Zaid already seemed to know. His expression darkened as they entered the hallway outside Nora's room. 2 additional security guards stood outside the door. Maya froze. "This is insane." "No," Zaid replied quietly. "This is what desperate people do when they're losing power." Maya looked at him instantly. "You think Preston did this?" "Not Preston." "Then who?" Zaid's jaw tightened slightly. "Grant Vale." The answer shocked her. "He would go after my mother? He's trying to find leverage." The realization made Maya sick. All of this, because wealthy people were terrified of losing money. Zaid gently opened Nora's hospital room door. Inside, Maya's mother sat awake near the window, wrapped in a pale blue blanket. The moment she saw Maya, relief flooded her tired face. "Oh, thank God," Nora whispered emotionally. "I saw the news." Maya rushed forward immediately and hugged her carefully. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. They simply held each other tightly. Then Nora slowly looked past Maya toward Zaid, standing quietly near the doorway. And suddenly, her entire expression changed. Not confusion. Recognition. "Zaid?" she whispered softly. The billionaire lowered his head respectfully. "It's good to see you again, Miss Whitmore." Tears instantly filled Nora's eyes. "Oh my goodness." Maya looked between them in disbelief. "You really know each other, Usam." Nora laughed weakly through her tears. "This young man used to come into my diner every winter wearing the same thin jacket." Maya turned toward Zaid slowly. "You never told me it was a diner." Zaid smiled faintly. "You never asked." Nora shook her head emotionally. "He looked so proud back then," she said softly, "even when he clearly had nothing." Maya watched Zaid carefully. For the first time, she began seeing pieces of the younger man he used to be. Not just the billionaire, the survivor. Nora reached gently for Zaid's hand. "And now look at you." His expression softened immediately. "You saved my life." "No," Nora corrected quietly. "You saved your own life. I only gave you soup and a warm place to sit." Zaid looked down briefly. "Sometimes that's enough to save someone." The room fell silent again, but this silence felt peaceful. Healing. Maya sat beside her mother's bed, while the rain slowly eased outside. For the first time since the wedding disaster began, everything finally felt still. Then Nora suddenly looked at Maya carefully. "Are you happy?" The question caught her off guard. Maya glanced toward Zaid, standing quietly near the windows. And slowly, she realized the answer frightened her. Because somehow, in the middle of chaos and heartbreak, she had found peace beside him. I think I'm finally learning what respect feels like, Maya admitted softly. Nora smiled knowingly. That matters more than money. Zaid quietly looked away toward the city skyline, almost as if the words affected him more deeply than he wanted to show. 3 months later, Chicago looked very different. The scandal involving Preston Vale and Camille Sterling had exploded across social media and national business news. Sterling Capital withdrew from multiple partnerships after leaked recordings damaged public trust. Grant Vale's company collapsed under investigation for financial fraud connected to the failed acquisition. And Preston, the man who once abandoned Maya publicly, became known across the city as the groom who traded love for money. But Maya rarely thought about him anymore, because her own life had transformed completely. Not into a fairy tale, into something real. The Grand Crescent Hotel now hosted a new charity foundation created by Al Haroun Global, the Whitmore Initiative, a program dedicated to helping single mothers, struggling workers, and women escaping financial abuse. Maya personally oversaw many of the programs herself. Not because Zaid asked her to, because she understood those women. She had been one of them. One afternoon, Maya walked through the hotel lobby carrying files when several employees suddenly stood straighter as she passed. Months ago, those same people barely noticed her existence. Now they greeted her respectfully, but Maya never allowed the power to change her. She still remembered every cruel whisper, every humiliating stare, every moment she felt invisible, and because of that, she treated everyone kindly, especially the employees nobody else noticed. Near the front desk, Diane Mercer quietly approached her. She looked nervous, smaller somehow. "Maya," Diane said softly, "I just wanted to apologize again." Maya studied her carefully. The old Diane would never have apologized sincerely. Power had humbled her. Or fear had. Maybe both. "I forgive you," Maya answered calmly. Diane looked genuinely shocked. "After everything I said to you?" Maya smiled faintly. "Holding on to anger only keeps the pain alive." Diane's eyes filled slightly with tears. And for the first time, Maya realized forgiveness could sometimes feel more powerful than revenge. That evening, the rooftop garden of the Grand Crescent glowed beneath soft golden lights. A small private ceremony had been arranged quietly overlooking the Chicago skyline. No reporters, no investors, no performance, just truth. Maya stood beneath white flowers wearing a simple ivory dress, while the wind moved gently through her hair. Across from her stood Zaid, not as a billionaire tonight, just as the man who chose her when everyone else walked away. Their first wedding had been born from chaos. This one felt real. The officiant smiled warmly. "Do you, Zaid Al Haroun, take Maya Whitmore as your wife?" Zaid never looked away from her. "With all my heart," he answered quietly. Maya felt tears fill her eyes instantly. Then the officiant turned toward her. "And do you, Maya Whitmore, take Zaid Al Haroun as your husband?" This time her answer came without fear. "Yes." Soft applause echoed around them as Zaid gently placed a new ring onto her finger. Not a rushed symbol born from humiliation. A promise. Then he leaned closer and whispered softly enough that only she could hear. "You never needed someone to rescue you, Maya." Her breath trembled slightly. "Then why did you stay?" A faint smile touched his face. "Because kindness like yours is rare." And for the first time in her life, Maya truly believed she was worthy of being loved. The city lights shimmered around them, while the people who once mocked her faded into memory. Because in the end, the poor waitress they abandoned at the altar became the woman nobody could ignore. Not because she married a billionaire, but because she never stopped being kind when the world gave her every reason to become cruel. True character reveals itself in difficult moments. Wealth can impress people, but kindness changes lives. Never judge someone by their job, clothes, or struggles, because the people society overlooks today may become the reason someone survives tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, comment where you're watching from and what lesson stayed with you the most. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories about love, respect, and second chances.